Jordan Oliver comes to Bellator MMA. They just made the announcement. This is a really big deal to a guy like me. First off, I'm a huge Jordan Oliver fan. I'm a Bellator fan. And I like to see how these wrestlers do when they come over to MMA. Now, the day of being really good at wrestling and therefore you were going to be successful in MMA, like that day is long gone. And you've got to have an element of wrestling. And this is a really lost concept. And as the smartest guy in the room and the most eloquent guy, I must fail at articulating this. Because it is stunning to me how few of guys get what I'm saying and then use that within their own careers. When I tell you that you don't need much wrestling, now that makes me a traitor to my own sport, right? The last time I said this was about 4 years ago, and I even had a public response from Kenny Monday, who could not believe that I would say that you don't need very good wrestling to make it in MMA anymore, but it's just the way it is. To give you an example, we're on the heels of a main event for the heavyweight championship of the world with Jon Jones, who was a junior college wrestler, taking on Ciryl Gane, who has never had a wrestling match. Meanwhile, somewhere on the undercard is a 3-time Division I champion named Bo Nickel. I mean, I'm trying to prove for you right now. We don't have to go back to 1993. We don't have to look into the future. We can look to today. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose this card. I had this topic, and now I'm just offering the most recent card to tell you the point that you don't need a whole lot of it. But you got to understand distance. The big difference in MMA and in wrestling. I was never one of these great wrestlers. I talked like I was. I wanted to be. And those were the guys that I looked up to. But I wasn't one of the Olympians and things like this. I was the guy that wanted to be an Olympian. But you go into MMA, you bring any one of those guys. Any one of those guys that beat me, that won the NCAAs, that won any way you want to do it, I'll whip their ass. How come? Because my stand-up is so much better? I'll take them all down. I'll out-wrestle all of them. The guys that I'm openly telling you were better wrestlers than me, I will out-wrestle all of them. I will take them down. They will never take me down. If I went down and gave them a chance on top, I'll get up off the bottom. If I ever take them down, I'll keep them there all night. How come? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it's one concept. One concept. In the sport of wrestling, you wrestle to your opponent. Your opponent can never move. You can just wrestle to him. As a matter of fact, we can do private workouts in the sport of wrestling with a dummy. There is a dummy, a doll, that is in most practice rooms. You can have no partner, turn the music on, and have that dummy. That dummy never has to move. Because in wrestling, you don't need your opponent to move. Your opponent's right foot can be in place. You can change elevation. You can shoot. You can penetrate. You can turn the corner. You can drop your shoulder. You can reach for two. And he never has to move his foot, ever. In the sport of wrestling, that's very important to be able to do that. Because a lot of times you'll be on the edge of the mat. You got to change elevation. You got to get to him. And you can't knock him back 3 inches. You can't knock him back 6 inches. You don't have it to give. You'll be out of bounds. It's very important in the sport of wrestling that you're good at wrestling to your opponent. In the sport of MMA, wrestling is through your opponent. In amateur wrestling, if I'm the aggressive guy, I change elevation and I attack, you don't have to move. In the sport of MMA, I'm the aggressive guy and I change elevation, I must knock you backwards. I must. That is the difference in MMA wrestling and amateur wrestling. I'll tell you guys a quick trick. You'd be stunned how many great wrestlers don't know this. I'm handing you the keys. I'm doing this in the spirit of Jordan Oliver coming over, and I don't want him to be one of these guys that we all scratch our head and go, God, I expected so much of him. If Jordan ever goes into a practice room again and he bends his knees, let's just wave our hands at his MMA career. If he ever goes into a practice room, it doesn't matter if it's a jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter what he's doing. If he bends his knees again, he doesn't understand what we're doing here. And we can just chalk our hands up to it. If you ever want to know how to take a guy down, if you ever want to know where your hands should go, don't ever think about his body parts. And your coaches are going to tell you behind his knees. And your coaches are going to tell you under his buttocks. They're even going to explain to you what a shelf is. You ever want to take a guy down, the answer of where you put your hands is on his fabric. That's the answer. A dumb wrestler will go onto a mat with shoes on, socks pulled up, a knee pad which leads right into the singlet. That guy doesn't wrestle on Saturday night. You will not take a guy down in wrestling or in MMA if you don't have a hold of his fabric. You cannot grease in the sport of wrestling because it would stop wrestling from happening. If you ever go into a wrestling room and you're overwhelmed, you walk in, you look around and go, oh crap, I'm the only guy. That guy's going to kill me. Tell you a trick. Tell him you forgot your shoes. Say, hey, I'm going to wrestle you. I'm going to come on the mat. I forgot my shoes today. Go out there without your shoes and socks on. He will almost never take you down. He must have a hold of it. But wrestlers don't know this. They think, oh, I shoot to the knee. They'll go their whole career and not realize I only took guys down that had on a knee pad. They'll think shoot to the ankle. But they'll never realize in their whole career, I wasn't grabbing his ankle. I wasn't grabbing his heel. I was grabbing his shoe. You will never take a guy down in MMA, ever, if you don't have a hold of his fabric. And they don't wear knee pads. They don't wear socks. They don't wear shoes. So now you've just got shorts, and some guys even do the real tight ones. But if you're a wrestler, you've got to understand this concept. You got to go through the guy, not to the guy. And if you ever walk into practice again and you bend your knees, which means the next thing you're going to do is look for head position. And the next thing you're going to do is try to find an elbow. And the next thing you're going to do is decide if you have an overhook or an underhook or a wrist control or a reverse wrist grip. Your chances of MMA are gone. You want to be a fighter? Stand upright. Understand your distance. You want to know where your hands go? Put them on the fabric. If you don't understand these concepts, enjoy your very brief time in this sport.